The American P-38. How an impossible trick made it invincible. Introduction. A shadow in the sky. The P-38 Lightning was a majestic, innovative fighter, a gleaming testament to American engineering prowess in the early days of World War II. Its distinctive twin-boom design, potent armament, and impressive range made it a formidable presence in the skies. Yet, this magnificent aircraft, destined for greatness, found itself locked in a silent, deadly battle against an invisible enemy, one far more insidious than any Axis fighter. This wasn't a struggle against bullets or bombs, but against the very laws of physics, threatening to ground an entire fleet of cutting-edge warplanes. The central question that plagued engineers, pilots, and military strategists alike was stark. How could such a brilliant aircraft be brought to the brink of failure by a mysterious, self-destructive phenomenon encountered during high-speed dives? Europe, 1943. P-38 pilot, adrenaline coursing, locked onto the tail of a fleeing Messerschmitt. He pushed his stick forward, committing his Lightning to a steep dive. The world outside became a blur of deepening blue and rapidly approaching green. The airspeed indicator spun wildly, the needle climbing past numbers previously considered extreme. Suddenly, with a jolt that threatened to rip the stick from his grasp, the control column froze. Then, violently, it slammed back, striking the pilot's chest. The nose of the aircraft pitched up sharply, forcing him hard against his seat. Below, the ground rushed towards him with terrifying speed. He strained, pushing with all his might, trying to break the dive, but the plane was unresponsive, a prisoner to an unseen force. This was compressibility tuck, a ghostly affliction, an aerodynamic paradox that snatched the lives of countless skilled pilots. This was the silent killer, a phenomenon that turned the P-38 from a hunter into the hunted, claiming aircraft not from enemy fire, but from the very air it was designed to master. Indeed, the P-38 was one of the fastest and longest-range fighters available at the start of World War II, a true marvel of aviation design. However, its most significant tactical disadvantage, a critical flaw that overshadowed its many strengths, was its inability to safely execute high-speed dives. This limitation was particularly devastating for a fighter, as the ability to disengage from combat or gain speed through a dive was a fundamental tactical maneuver. The aircraft's high-speed characteristics, so impressive in level flight, became a deadly trap when pointed earthward. As one pilot from the 55th Fighter Group eloquently put it, capturing the frustration and fear of many, "You were king in level flight, but as soon as you went down, it turned into a death trap. We were losing planes not from enemy fire, but from physics itself." This candid observation highlighted the profound challenge faced by P-38 squadrons. The superior performance in horizontal flight, which gave pilots a sense of invincibility, was cruelly contradicted by the aircraft's fatal vulnerability in a dive. It was a problem that baffled engineers, demoralized pilots, and threatened to undermine the strategic importance of an otherwise groundbreaking fighter. The shadow in the sky was not cast by an enemy, but by the very forces of nature, demanding a solution that seemed, at first glance, impossible. Chapter 1. The Thunderbolt's Curse. A mystery they couldn't solve. 1942 to 1943. This chapter delves deep into the enigmatic nature of the P-38's Achilles heel. Why did such an advanced aircraft behave so fatally? We explore the growing despair among engineers and military strategists who, despite deploying every traditional aeronautical method at their disposal, found themselves at a complete impasse. The phenomenon that plagued the P-38 was a complex aerodynamic issue, primarily known as Mach tuck and compressibility tuck. As the aircraft accelerated to speeds approaching 0.68 Mach, the airflow over certain parts of the wing, specifically the upper surface, began to accelerate to supersonic speeds, even though the aircraft itself was still subsonic. This localized supersonic flow generated shock waves. These shock waves, in turn, caused a significant shift in the center of lift rearward on the wing. This rearward shift created a powerful, uncommanded nose-down pitching moment, effectively locking the elevator controls and rendering them ineffective. The pilot's attempts to pull back on the stick and raise the nose were met with an unyielding force, as the elevators themselves became trapped in the turbulent, high-pressure flow behind the shock waves. It was as if an invisible hand was pushing the nose of the plane towards the earth, beyond the pilot's ability to correct. Lockheed engineers, a team of brilliant minds, tirelessly pursued solutions using every conventional approach known to aviation at the time. They experimented with various modifications, some quite drastic. They tried adding weights to the elevators, hoping to counteract the pitching moment with sheer mass. They reinforced the aileron structures, believing that structural flexing might be contributing to the problem. They even went as far as altering the wing profile, subtly reshaping the leading edge and curvature, in an attempt to manipulate the airflow and delay the onset of compressibility effects. Yet, each attempt, each meticulously planned modification proved futile. The problem persisted, claiming more aircraft and pilots, deepening the mystery and the frustration. One test pilot, participating in these often harrowing trials, lightened the mood with dark humor, quipping, "We put so much lead on it, it would dive like a falcon, if it didn't fall apart in the process." This remark, while a jest, underscored the desperate measures being taken and the inherent dangers involved in trying to force a solution without fully understanding the core problem. The structural integrity of the aircraft was constantly pushed to its limits during these experimental dives, adding another layer of risk to an already perilous endeavor. A persistent rumor, whispered among pilots and ground crews, suggested that Japanese pilots were well aware of the P-38's critical vulnerability. It was said that when confronted by a lightning, rather than engaging in a direct dogfight, their tactics often involved provocative maneuvers designed to coax the American pilots into a high-speed dive. The Japanese, so the whispers went, would simply bait the P-38 into the fatal descent, allowing the compressibility tuck to do their work for them. American pilots would then tragically crash, not from a single enemy bullet, but from the very physics of their own aircraft. While perhaps exaggerated, such rumors highlighted the perceived tactical disadvantage and the psychological toll this unseen enemy took on the P-38 crews, amplifying the sense of urgency to find a definitive solution. Chapter 2: The Heretic from California. An idea not born in the design office, 1943. In the bleak landscape of aerodynamic despair surrounding the P-38's dive problem, a glimmer of hope emerged from an unexpected source, or rather, from an individual whose approach transcended the conventional wisdom of the time. This chapter introduces the civilian inventor whose fresh perspective, unburdened by established military doctrines and aeronautical dogmas, managed to unlock a solution where the most brilliant minds within the industry had failed. This was not an outsider in the strictest sense, but someone whose thinking diverged so radically that it might as well have been. The inventive mind behind the groundbreaking solution was Jack Northrop. While the article's introduction playfully labels him a civilian inventor, it's crucial to acknowledge the factual context. Northrop was far from an outsider. He was the son of the founder of Northrop Corporation, a giant in aviation, and a supremely talented aerodynamicist who, at this critical juncture, was working for Lockheed itself. His profound understanding of aircraft design and aerodynamics was unquestionable. However, his methodology and the nature of his eventual solution were so unconventional, so outside the prevailing engineering paradigm, that his approach felt radical and unorthodox, almost an act of intellectual rebellion against established norms. He wasn't seeking to reinforce, stiffen, or add weight the go-to solutions of his peers. Instead, he sought a more elegant, almost counterintuitive answer. Legend, often embellishing the truth for dramatic effect, traces the genesis of Northrop's revolutionary idea to an observation made far from the sterile environment of a wind tunnel or design office. The anecdote suggests that inspiration struck Northrop while he was watching birds of prey soaring and diving in the clear Californian skies. He reputedly noticed something subtle yet profound in the way falcons, known for their incredible diving speeds, would slightly flex or tuck the tips of their wings as they plunged towards their quarry. This minor, almost imperceptible adjustment, he observed, appeared to stabilize their bodies, allowing for a controlled descent despite the immense speeds. This hint from nature, a seemingly simple observation of avian mechanics, became the pivotal key to unlocking the complex aerodynamic riddle of the P-38. It was a moment of profound insight, a connection between the natural world and cutting-edge aviation that bypassed years of complex calculations and failed experiments. This revelation, if the legend holds, led Northrop to a fundamental reevaluation of the problem. Instead of fighting the dive, he began to consider how to master it. His alleged remark to his colleagues perfectly encapsulates this paradigm shift. "You're all trying to make the plane not dive. What if we just make it dive correctly?" This statement, whether uttered precisely as quoted or interpreted through the lens of history, reveals the core of his genius. While others were attempting to suppress the compressibility effects, to build a stronger or stiffer aircraft that could resist the forces, Northrop envisioned a way to work with those forces. He recognized that the dive was an inherent characteristic of high-speed flight for the P-38. The solution, therefore, wasn't to eliminate the dive but to understand and manipulate the aerodynamic forces during the dive, turning a deadly flaw into a controllable maneuver. It was a bold, almost heretical thought in an era dominated by brute force engineering, and it set the stage for one of the most ingenious aerodynamic tricks in aviation history. Chapter 3: The Ingenious Trick. The Slots That Saved Thousands of Lives, 1944. This chapter forms the core of our article, unveiling the ingenious yet surprisingly simple solution that transformed the P-38 Lightning from a magnificent but flawed machine into a truly formidable weapon. We will explain, in detail but in an accessible manner, the essence of this impossible trick and how a seemingly primitive device managed to outwit the most complex aerodynamic challenges. The brilliant and ultimately effective solution devised by Jack Northrop involved the installation of small, slotted dive flaps. These flaps were strategically positioned on the upper surface of the P-38's wing, just forward of the ailerons. Before initiating a high-speed dive, the pilot would activate these flaps, extending them slightly into the airflow. This seemingly minor addition represented a radical departure from the previously attempted, more complex, and ultimately unsuccessful engineering modifications. It was a solution born not of brute force or extensive structural redesign, but of an elegant understanding of aerodynamics. These trimmer launchers, as they were sometimes called, were not conventional air brakes, nor were they simply devices to increase drag to slow the aircraft down. Their genius lay in their ability to perform an aerodynamic sleight of hand. When deployed, these small, slotted flaps created a carefully controlled turbulence and a localized pressure disturbance over the wing's upper surface. Crucially, this disturbance caused the effective center of pressure on the wing to shift forward. This forward shift generated a subtle but precise nose-up, or pitching up, moment. This generated moment was designed to precisely counteract the deadly nose-down pitching moment caused by the compressibility tuck. In essence, the aircraft was made to duck under the very shockwave it created, allowing the pilot to regain full control. Think of it this way. The compressibility tuck pushed the nose down, locking the controls. Northrop's flaps created an opposing, upward force on the nose, allowing the pilot to effectively fight back against the aerodynamic forces that previously rendered the aircraft uncontrollable. It wasn't about eliminating the shock waves, but about managing their effect. The P-38, once a prisoner of high-speed aerodynamics, was now given the means to actively counteract its fatal flaw. This simple, elegant mechanism fundamentally altered the airflow over the wing at critical speeds, restoring the pilot's authority over the pitch control. Imagine the scene from the pilot's perspective. Before launching an attack or disengaging from a dogfight, the pilot would not only acquire their target but also reach for a specific lever. With a subtle hiss, two small, unassuming slots would deploy on the leading edge of each wing's upper surface. And now, as the aircraft plunged downwards, it no longer struggled against an invisible, irresistible force. Instead, the lightning would respond obediently and smoothly, precisely guiding itself wherever the pilot directed it. The terrifying uncertainty and the sense of impending doom that had once accompanied high-speed dives were replaced by a newfound feeling of mastery and control. The pilot, once a helpless passenger in a runaway aircraft, was now truly the commander of his machine. The psychological burden lifted, replaced by confidence, knowing that the P-38, once a potential death trap, was now a reliable and deadly platform in all flight regimes. This simple, mechanical trick had effectively disarmed the aerodynamic curse, turning a once-feared maneuver into a tactical advantage. Chapter 4. From Skepticism to Triumph. The Journey from Blueprint to Legend, 1944 to 1945. This chapter charts the crucial phase of implementing Northrop's ingenious invention. It delves into the initial skepticism that often accompanies radical new ideas, the rigorous testing process that proved its efficacy, and ultimately, how this simple modification fundamentally transformed the P-38's combat capabilities, solidifying its place in aviation history. The trials of the modified P-38, equipped with Northrop's dive flaps, were nothing short of brilliant. The results were immediate and unequivocally positive, silencing the initial doubts and proving the effectiveness of the impossible trick. Test pilots, who had previously faced the terror of an uncontrollable dive, now reported a profound transformation in the aircraft's handling. The P-38, once prone to mock tuck, could now execute high-speed dives with precision and stability, allowing pilots to recover with ease and maintain control throughout the maneuver. This breakthrough was so critical and so successful that there was no time for lengthy bureaucratic processes. Kits for the field modification were immediately rushed to all theaters of war where P-38's were deployed. By 1944, a remarkable feat of logistical coordination, the vast majority of P-38's in active service had received this vital update. This rapid, widespread implementation underscored the urgency of the problem and the undeniable success of Northrop's solution. To accelerate the crucial testing and validation process, engineers employed innovative methods beyond just piloted flights. In a testament to wartime ingenuity, they utilized large, remotely controlled P-38 models. These unmanned models were precisely engineered replicas, designed to simulate the aerodynamic characteristics of the full-scale aircraft. They were then carried aloft by B-17 bombers to high altitudes, from which they were deliberately released to simulate high-speed dives. Equipped with telemetry and recording devices, these models provided invaluable data on the behavior of the dive flaps and the aircraft's response to compressibility effects without risking human lives. This clever approach allowed for a much higher volume of test runs and provided crucial data that further validated the effectiveness of the modification, significantly speeding up the deployment timeline. This blend of traditional piloting and cutting-edge remote-controlled testing highlighted the determination to resolve the P-38's critical flaw efficiently. The impact of the dive flaps on pilot confidence and operational effectiveness was immediate and profound. Lockheed test pilot Milton Larry Balfour, a man intimately familiar with the P-38's previous treacherous diving characteristics, encapsulated the sentiment of many when he recounted his experience. "The first time I tried those flaps in a dive, I didn't believe my eyes. It was like someone had lifted 100-pound weight off my shoulders. The plane was mine again." This powerful quote speaks volumes about the psychological burden that had been placed on pilots. The feeling of being a helpless passenger in their own aircraft during a dive was replaced by the exhilarating return of control. This restoration of command not only made the P-38 safer but also unleashed its full tactical potential, allowing pilots to exploit its speed and diving capabilities without the previous fear of self-destruction. The modification wasn't just a technical fix. It was a psychological liberation that transformed the P-38 into a truly formidable and reliable warplane. Conclusion: the legacy of the impossible trick. In concluding our exploration of the P-38 Lightning and its extraordinary transformation, we look beyond the immediate wartime context to grasp the enduring significance of Jack Northrop's ingenious invention. This final section will summarize the profound impact of the dive flaps and connect this wartime innovation to the broader tapestry of modern aviation. With the crucial modification of Northrop's dive flaps, the P-38 Lightning was finally able to realize its full, magnificent potential. The crippling tactical disadvantage in high-speed dives was eliminated, allowing the aircraft to fully leverage its exceptional speed, range, and firepower. It emerged as one of the most formidable and versatile fighters of the war. This was particularly evident in the vast expanses of the Pacific Theater, where its extended range made it invaluable for long-range interdiction missions. Its newly acquired diving capability meant it could engage, disengage, and pursue with unprecedented confidence. A notable historical moment that underscores the P-38's enhanced capabilities was its critical role in the interception and liquidation of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of the Pearl Harbor attack. This daring and complex mission, requiring precise timing and high-speed maneuvers, would have been considerably more hazardous, if not impossible, without the P-38's newfound aerodynamic stability. The Lightning truly became a master of its domain, proving its worth in the most challenging combat scenarios. Northrop's solution, simple yet profoundly effective, was more than just a quick fix for a wartime problem. It was a conceptual precursor to advanced aerospace technologies. His approach was a nascent form of what we now recognize as active aerodynamics and fly-by-wire systems. Rather than attempting to rigidly overpower nature's laws, Northrop found a way to collaborate with them, to subtly manipulate aerodynamic forces to achieve a desired outcome. He didn't fight against the onset of compressibility. He found a clever method to compensate for its effects, using the very principles of airflow to restore control. This philosophy, understanding and subtly influencing dynamic aerodynamic behaviors rather than merely resisting them, laid foundational groundwork for future advancements where aircraft control is dynamically managed through sophisticated systems, often making minute, active adjustments to airflow or control surfaces. It was an early, mechanical embodiment of a principle that would later become a cornerstone of high-performance aircraft design. Ultimately, the story of the P-38's dive flaps stands as a powerful testament to human ingenuity. A deceptively simple, almost primitive mechanism, just two small slots deployed from the wing, transformed an elegant yet vulnerable Lightning into a true lord of the skies. This tale profoundly demonstrates that the greatest victories are not always achieved through brute force or overwhelming power, but often through the profound strength and clarity of human thought. It was a trick that, from a purely physical standpoint, seemed almost impossible to implement effectively, yet it worked. By enabling the P-38 to overcome its most critical flaw, it rendered the aircraft genuinely invincible in the eyes of its pilots and, indeed, in the annals of aviation history. The legacy of these small slots is a reminder that sometimes the most elegant solutions are also the most revolutionary.